Imagine a distant land untouched by iron or cities, a land where the wind whispers among the trees and rivers breathe like living beings. There lived a unique people who carried the secrets of nature in their hearts. Strangers called them the Red Indians, but they did not call themselves by that name. They saw themselves as children of the sun, siblings of the birds, and protectors of the earth that embraced them. Their story is not about great palaces or massive armies, but about the rhythm of the drums, the dances of the moon, and wisdom passed down in whispers from generation to generation. Come with us to open a forgotten page of history, a page that tells how humans once lived in complete harmony with the cosmos. Deep within the American continent, where vast plains stretch and mountains stand like silent guardians, a people arose who lived in complete harmony with nature. They looked upon the earth as a child looks at its mother, not as something they owned, but as a spirit that protects and feeds them. A step on the soil was, for them, a covenant to preserve it. They saw the river as a vein of life. They did not just drink from it, but performed short rituals before touching its waters, raising their hands to the sky in thanks. When they cut down a tree, they did so only with great care, and after a brief prayer asking the tree's spirit to allow them to take what they needed. This spiritual relationship made them deal with nature not just as a source of wealth, but as a living entity worthy of respect.
In the plains, immense herds of buffalo scattered, their sight running with thick dust was a spectacle that inspired awe and reminded them of the power of the world they lived in. The buffalo was not just food, but a symbol of giving. Its meat was sustenance, its hide was used to make shelter and clothing, and its bones were transformed into daily tools, even its horns were used as containers, nothing went to waste. As for the sky, it was an open book to them. They followed the movement of the stars to know the time and the seasons, and when the moon shone full, they considered it a sign of the beginning of sacred nights filled with singing and dancing. Rain was not merely water falling, but a gift from the high spirits, and so they welcomed it with joy, considering it a message of hope for the continuation of life. For them, life was inseparable from the land. Their home was a tent made of animal hides, set up in an open location for easy relocation when they moved. They did not leave behind expensive stone buildings, but an impression harmonious with nature, as if they intended to pass through this world lightly, without wounding the earth. They realized that man is a guest and the earth remains after him, so they did not seek ownership or control, but rather to live in balance with their surroundings. This simple philosophy is what shaped their initial identity and gave them the ability to endure for long centuries. Thus, at the beginning of the story, we see that their relationship with the land was not merely a means of survival but a spirit guiding their entire lives. And with this land, their story begins. Let us now move to the details of their daily lives. The day of the Native Americans began with a calm, yet busy, rhythm. Every individual in the tribe knew what they had to do. The women headed to the small fields from the morning, where they planted corn, beans, and squash. These plants were called the Three Sisters, as they grew together and completed each other. The corn would rise high to serve as a support, the beans would wrap around its stalks, and the squash would spread its wide leaves to protect the soil from the sun's dryness. While the women planted and harvested, the men stood at the edge of the forest tracking animal signs. Hunting was not for pleasure but a serious task for the life of the tribe. They moved lightly, hiding behind trees, waiting for long hours until the right moment came to release the arrows. The buffalo and deer were their most important game, but they also knew how to utilize rabbits, birds, and fish, leaving no opportunity for survival to slip from their hands. The children, in turn, were not far from work. The young ones helped their mothers collect herbs or fetch water from the river, and at the same time, they learned skills through play. They made small bows out of wood, raced to see who could shoot an arrow furthest, or built small mud houses, imitating the homes of the adults. In the evening, they gathered by the fire to listen to the stories told by the elders. Life within the tribe was not only farming and hunting but also daily cooperation in every detail. If someone set up a new home made of animal hides, everyone shared in raising it. If a warrior returned with abundant game, the meat was distributed to everyone, so no one went to bed hungry. This sharing made them live as one body, where joy was shared, and sorrow was divided among all. Even rest times had a special flavor. They gathered near the river in the summer for swimming or sat under the trees to listen to the simple flute music made of bone, and the drums that set the rhythm of their hearts with the sound of nature. As for the cold nights, the fire burned in the middle of the square, and the whole tribe gathered around it. There, the stories of the ancestors were told, and songs were repeated, linking the past to the present. Thus, their days were a mixture of work and play, of fatigue and joy, of hunting and farming, a life that seemed simple but was full of meaning, a life not based on the individual alone, but on the whole tribe. With this close image of their daily details, we now move to another chapter that reveals their outward features, to see how their clothing and adornments were a mark of their identity and spirit. When you look at the Native American tribes from afar, the first thing that draws your attention is their clothing and adornments. Clothing for them was not merely a covering for the body but a complete canvas that told the observer the person's story and status within the tribe. The women sewed garments from animal hides after they were cleaned and embroidered with colored threads or small, shiny beads. Their hands turned the simple piece into an artistic work overflowing with colors and symbols. Some long garments were decorated with geometric shapes or drawings inspired by the sun and birds. Every color had a meaning. Red symbolized life, yellow symbolized the sun, and blue was a reference to the sky. The men, in turn, wore short jackets or leather trousers and often tied decorated belts around their waists. But what truly distinguished them was the adornment they wore on their heads. The feather held a great status, and every feather carried a meaning. An eagle feather was evidence of courage, and a falcon feather was a sign of wisdom. The colored feather was sometimes granted after a heroic achievement, and the more feathers, the more the tribe respected the warrior. Adornment was not limited to clothing only but extended to the body. Some men painted their faces with striking colors before going out to hunt or war. Red on the cheeks was a sign of strength, and black lines around the eyes were a symbol of focus and attention. Women sometimes drew thin lines on their arms or placed circles on their foreheads. These marks protected the spirit and connected it to the hidden forces of nature. As for jewelry, it was an essential part of daily life. Women wore long necklaces made of shell and bracelets made of bone or copper. Even children had small amulets given to them at birth as a talisman for protection. These pieces were not just adornments but silent messages carrying the meanings of love and belonging, sometimes passing from generation to generation as a family legacy. In major events, such as harvest or marriage celebrations, everyone wore their finest attire. Women left their hair flowing and decorated it with colored feathers or cloth ribbons. Men painted their faces with vibrant colors and wore headdresses decorated with long feathers that swayed in the air with the movement of the dance. The entire scene looked like a living painting with colors, drums, and singing, as if the whole tribe transformed into a single work of art. Even the sounds of the adornments played a role. When they moved, the metallic bracelets produced a slight sound that blended with the beating of the drums, making the dance more rhythmic. In this sense, clothing became part of the music, and adornment part of the story. Clothing for the Native Americans was not a luxury but a language. Every piece carried a meaning, every color told a story, and every feather or bead held one of their secrets. And through this silent language, they expressed their identity and maintained their status among their tribes. Although the adornments revealed aspects of their personalities, what truly united them was what they believed in within themselves. For this, we now leave their outward appearance to delve into the depths of their customs and rituals, where the spirit reveals more than what the eye sees. In the life of the Native Americans, rituals were not merely external displays but a vein connecting them to the cosmos. Every movement, every song, every dance was part of a deep belief that the spirit dwells in everything. There was no separation between the material world and the spiritual world. Instead, they merged into a single fabric in which humans lived side by side with the trees, the water, and the wind. The sun was a sacred being to them. They saw it as a great mother illuminating the day and providing warmth. In the morning, they raised their arms to the sky, greeting the sun at its rise. As for the moon, it had a special place in their hearts. They considered its fullness a sign of blessed nights in which dances were held and hymns were recited. At the change of seasons, the tribe members held large celebrations. At the beginning of spring, they danced around the fire, asking for a season full of goodness. In the autumn, after harvesting corn, squash, and beans, they gathered in a wide square to offer thanks. Fires were lit, and drums beat with a rhythm resembling a heartbeat, and everyone began to dance in circles, men and women, old and young, as if the entire tribe turned into a single body swaying to the sound of the drums. There was also a ritual called the ghost dance. Participants wore white clothes and moved with slow movements resembling the movements of spirits. The purpose of this ritual was not fear, but hope for the return of the ancestors to support the living. As for the buffalo dance, it was a thank you to the animal that granted them meat and hide. Dancers put horns on their heads and imitated the movement of the buffalo in the wilderness, in reverence for this creature that helped them survive. The drums were a main tool in every ritual. Their deep sound entered the heart and made the listener feel part of a larger world. The flute made of bone emitted sad melodies, as if echoing the wind among the trees. As for the singing, it was chanted collectively, simple words but carrying great meanings about the earth, the sky, life, and death. Even the fire had a special status. When it burned in the middle of the square, it was not just considered a source of warmth but a link between the human world and the world of spirits. They cast fragrant herbs into it, and the smoke rose to the sky as a message of thanks. Among their most prominent rituals were also those accompanying birth or the transition from childhood to manhood. The young boy was sometimes sent to the forest for several days with little food to test his solitude, and he would return to the tribe stronger. Upon his return, he was welcomed with dancing and singing as a sign that he had become a full member of society. These rituals granted the tribe a spiritual unity and made the individual feel that he was not alone but part of a wide circle that included nature, the ancestors, and the unseen spirits. Although customs and rituals formed the heart of their spiritual life, their life was not without disputes and conflicts. And here appears another aspect of their civilization, the system of justice they devised in their own way. Justice among the Native Americans was not written in laws on paper or kept in high-walled courts, but was present in the conscience of the tribe and in the wisdom passed down by the elders from generation to generation. They believed that people were like branches on one tree, and if a branch broke, the rest should help mend it, not leave it to wither. When a dispute occurred between two individuals, the matter was not left to anger or revenge, but a small council of elders gathered. These elders were not rulers in the traditional sense, but wise men with experience who knew the people and the secrets of life. They sat in an open square to show that the judgment was public and clear, heard by everyone. The elders listened to each party, allowing them to speak without interruption until each person had finished presenting their case. The judgment was not a harsh punishment but rather for the purpose of restoring balance. For example, if someone stole food, they were not punished by imprisonment but were asked to work with the damaged family or to provide them with whatever hunting or farming they could. The goal was always for the offender to return as a part of the community, not to be excluded from it. If a serious assault occurred, the solution was sometimes a large gift to the injured party or their family, or a commitment to public service that benefited everyone. Children also learned from these situations. They sat with their parents in listening circles, watching how the conflict was resolved through participation, not exclusion. In some tribes, there was a man known as the staff bearer. This person was not a soldier but a mediator who reminded people of the tribe's laws. If a conflict began to escalate, his mere presence among the people was enough to calm the souls, as he symbolized moral discipline, not punishment. What is striking is that their justice was not used to intimidate people but to protect the community. They believed that if the goal of punishment was revenge, it increased evil, but if its goal was reform, it restored harmony. With this simple understanding, they lived for long centuries, maintaining internal cohesion even in the most difficult times. Although justice regulated their lives, it was not separate from family ties. The family for them was not just a small unit but the foundation of the entire tribe. And here we move to another chapter that reveals how marriage and family were cornerstones of their lives. Marriage among the Native Americans was not just an agreement between two people, but a sacred covenant involving both families and the entire tribe. They considered it a bond that united kin and connected humans to the nature around them. The celebration was not just a social ritual but a moment that showed how the tribe viewed itself and understood the meaning of life. When a young man decided to marry, the matter began with a visit to the girl's family. He did not approach directly but sent a small gift, which might be a deer hide or a hunting tool he made with his own hands. If the family accepted the gift, it meant the door was open for discussion. After that, the elders of the two families gathered to confirm the terms. There were no written contracts, but words spoken before witnesses, as if they were vows tied to honor. On the wedding day, the entire tribe prepared. Women carefully sewed the bride's dress, embroidering shapes of birds or stars on it. Sometimes the clothes were decorated with blue and red threads, symbolizing the sky and the sun. The groom wore special leather and placed an eagle feather in his hair, a sign of strength and courage. The celebration began in the open air in the middle of the square. They lit the fire, not just for warmth but as a symbol of the light that would illuminate the couple's life. The bride and groom stood before the fire, raising their hands to the sky as if asking the spirits to bless their union. Then the groom presented a symbolic gift to the bride. It might be a horse, a bow, or a piece of art he made with his own hands, to show he was capable of caring for the home. After the announcement of the marriage, the music began. The drums beat with a continuous rhythm, and the flute played sad but reverent sounds. Women sang special songs only sung on this occasion, their words simple but overflowing with meaning, a prayer for love, a hope for having children, and a plea for the family to remain united. Then the tribe began to dance. The men moved in a circle around the couple, lifting their feet with every drumbeat. The women clapped and sang, and the children ran around them with innocent joy. The whole scene looked like a living painting with colors, fire, and sounds, as if the entire tribe was celebrating the birth of a new life. But marriage was not an end but a beginning of responsibility. The groom had to prove he was capable of hunting and protecting the home, and the bride had to show her wisdom in raising the children and caring for the shelter. In all this, the responsibility was not individual but collective. If someone fell ill, the tribe shared in their care. If a new baby was born, everyone celebrated as if the child was their own. The child, to them, was a gift from the sky. When born, a small bone necklace was placed around their neck as a talisman to protect them from evil spirits. At night, the mother lulled them with a quiet song, its simple words conveying a sense of security. The father, in turn, sometimes took the child hunting with him, to teach them from an early age that life is not easy but is full of meaning. In this way, the family was not a small unit but the heart of the tribe. Through it, heritage was passed down, stories continued, and the new generation learned how to live in harmony with the earth and the sky. Although marriage and family formed the basis of life, this life was not always peaceful. In many periods, the Native Americans were forced to protect their land and their children from dangers, and here begins another story, the story of wars and defense. The Native Americans were not fond of war nor seekers of it, but they knew that the land they lived upon needed protection and that the tribe could not endure without the courage of its children. Their battles were not for invasion but mostly for the defense of their right to hunt, or their grazing lands, or the waters of a river flowing near their village. The warrior to them was not a bloodthirsty person but a protector of the land and the family. From a young age, the boys trained to use the bow and arrow and to walk lightly through the forests. They learned how to observe footprints on the soil and how to tell from broken branches that an enemy had passed there. These skills were not limited to war but were part of the art of living in nature. Before battle, they performed special rituals. The warriors sat in a circle, chanting powerful hymns that ignited enthusiasm in their hearts. The drums beat with a fast rhythm, and black and red lines were drawn on their faces, not just for decoration but to give each warrior a sense that he was connected to the spirit of the tribe and the spirits of the ancestors. When it was time to fight, they moved in small groups, hiding behind trees and utilizing the night as if it were a magical cover. Their strength was not in numbers but in their intelligence. They used hand signals or bird whistles to communicate and advanced slowly until they reached their target. When they shot arrows, they came from unexpected places, confusing their opponents. But courage for them was not measured only by the ability to kill. The warrior who could touch his enemy and then return alive was highly valued, as if this action showed he possessed a greater courage than stabbing or killing. Respect for the opponent after the battle was also part of the warrior's honor. If a prisoner fell into their hands, they treated him as they treated their children, offering him water and food. Women also had an indirect role in defense. They prepared food for the warriors and cared for the wounded upon their return. As for the children, they sat to listen to the stories of the battles, memorizing the names of the brave and learning that honor means not just winning, but protecting the tribe. Despite the difficulty of these wars, they did not lose their humanity. They came out of them tougher, but always returned to dancing and singing, as if the tribe wanted to remind itself that life is greater than war, and it continues with song, not with the sword. Although arrows and spears were their weapons, what preserved their true existence was their wisdom and myths, those that passed down from generation to generation. Let us discover their deep world filled with stories and proverbs. At the heart of every Native American tribe, there was a hidden world not seen by the eye but heard in stories and lived in imagination, a world of myths that connected man to animal, sky to earth, and life to death. These stories were not just entertainment on long nights but schools from which the young learned lessons in courage, honesty, and love for nature. The wolf was one of the heroes of these stories, sometimes depicted as a cunning creature teaching people caution, and sometimes as a loyal companion who knew the ways of the forest and guided travelers to safety. The eagle was also strongly present, as they considered it the messenger of the sky, flying high to see what humans cannot, and returning with messages from the upper world. Even the fish and the rivers had stories told to remind people that every drop of water holds a secret of life's mysteries. Wisdom was not only in the stories but also in the proverbs passed down by word of mouth. They used to say, "The earth we do not inherit from our ancestors, but borrow from our children," a simple proverb that carries a far-reaching vision, showing their awareness that every generation is responsible for the next. They also repeated, "He who listens to the wind's whisper knows more than he who shouts in the storm," a short sentence that instills the value of patience and listening in the souls. Amidst the tribe, there was a man known as the Medicine Man. He was not a physician in the modern sense but a sage who combined knowledge of herbs with the ability to read spirits. He knew which plant to use to heal a fever and which leaf relieved pain. More importantly, he told stories that inspired people and strengthened their resolve in difficult times. On moonlit nights, the children gathered around the fire, their eyes staring into the flame, and the elders began to narrate the stories of the ancestors. They wove their words as if they were magical threads, making the listener feel that the ancient spirits hovered above them and that every star in the sky watched what was happening on earth. These moments were not just for entertainment but for establishing identity and passing on heritage from generation to generation. Even dreams had a special place in their lives. They believed that a dream was not just fleeting images but a message from another world. If someone dreamed of an eagle soaring, it was a good omen, and if they saw a wolf in their sleep, perhaps it was a warning of imminent danger. Therefore, people told their dreams to the elders to find signs that helped them make decisions. In this way, wisdom and myths for the Native Americans were like an internal map guiding them on their journey through the harsh nature. They did not need written books because the words of the ancestors were engraved in their memories and remained alive with every new generation. But as time passed, their lives did not remain as they were. A difficult moment arrived that turned everything upside down, the moment the stranger arrived from beyond the sea, and the bitter end began. At the beginning of the 15th century, when Europe's ships began to cross the Atlantic Ocean, the Native Americans did not know that their world was about to change forever. They lived in balance with the land, but the arrival of the strangers brought with it a new era, an era full of suffering. The first thing that struck them was disease. Epidemics like measles spread with terrifying speed. They had no immunity against these diseases, and people began to fall by the dozens, then by the hundreds, until entire villages turned into silent places where only weeping could be heard. Some elders said that the spirits had abandoned the land, because they had never seen death of this magnitude before. The matter did not stop at diseases. The Europeans wanted the land, the grazing lands and the forests rich in game. Small armies armed with rifles and cannons faced tribes carrying bows and arrows. The balance was uneven, and the tribes lost their lands little by little. Many of them were forced to leave their homes. The tribes were displaced from their ancient places and marched in long processions known in history as the Trail of Tears. Men, women, and children walked hundreds of miles on foot, enduring bitter cold and severe hunger, until many died along the way. Nevertheless, resistance was not absent. Some tribes fought bravely for years, like the Cherokee and the Sioux, but modern weapons were harsher, and the larger numbers were on the side of the invaders. In the end, the survivors were forced to live in small areas, far from their plains and rivers they had known for centuries. The loss was not only material but also spiritual. Many rituals were banned, and ancient dances were forbidden to be performed. Schools were established to force children to speak a new language and prohibited their native tongue, as the goal was not just to control the land but to erase the identity itself. Nevertheless, the sound of singing remained present on silent nights. Some elders told stories to the children, stories of the wolf and the eagle, trying to preserve what remained of their heritage. This form of quiet resistance was stronger than the sword because it preserved the roots in the hearts of the people, even if the stranger tried to uproot them. It was a bitter end, not only because of the war but because of their feeling that the world they knew was collapsing before their eyes. Yet, their spirits did not completely extinguish, enough remained to be passed on to subsequent generations. And out of this pain, a new chapter would be born, a chapter about the legacy that did not fade and is still present today. Despite all the loss and pain the Native Americans went through, they did not let their heritage disappear. In the 20th century, and with the beginnings of the 21st century, new voices from their descendants began to rise again, trying to preserve what remained of the language and rituals. Small schools were established that taught words from their ancient languages to maintain the connection between generations. In some villages, celebrations are still held as they were hundreds of years ago. When the moon is full, fires are lit in the squares, the drums beat, and people begin to dance in wide circles. Ancient sounds mix with modern sounds, but the meaning is one, a reminder that the spirit carried by the ancestors has not died. Even today, they still craft artwork from feathers, beads, and bone. Some of these pieces are displayed in major museums, but many are made for rituals and daily use. Every piece carries a meaning, as if it is a message from the past to the present. In our modern time, some tribal leaders participate in international conferences, speaking about the environment and living with the earth. They say that man is not the master of nature, but a part of it. This idea, which they lived by for thousands of years, has become a message needed by the whole world today. The children playing in the plains now hear stories of the wolf and the eagle, just as their ancestors heard them. And when they walk among the trees, they are told that every leaf holds a spirit and that every river speaks to those who listen. In this way, the heritage continues, not as a faint memory, but as a renewed life. The Native Americans lived through a difficult time, but they left humanity a legacy that cannot be erased, the love of nature, the belief in the spirit, and the ability to live in harmony. This legacy is not just history but a living lesson for the world. It reminds us that simplicity can be deeper than all manifestations of power. Thus, when we reflect on the journey of the Native Americans, we see that their story was not just a tale of an ancient people. It was a mirror reflecting man's relationship with the earth, showing that the spirit is tougher than the weapon and that wisdom is more enduring than power. It is a timeless message that man is a guest on this earth, and what he leaves behind is not palaces or treasures, but the memory of a life lived in harmony with the cosmos.